Well, former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a nerve agent back in March in Salisbury. The incident was immediately blamed on Russia then and led to an enormous diplomatic fallout between London and Moscow.
The government has concluded that it is highly likely that Russia was responsible for the act against Sergei and Yulia Skripal. There can be no suggestion of business as usual in relation to our interaction with Russia. Mr. Speaker, this action has happened against a backdrop of a well-established pattern of Russian state aggression.
OK, well, let's dig deeper then into the issue. We're now joined by RT's Murad Gazdiev in the studio, who has investigated the origins of Novichok-type nerve agents too. So let's talk to him about it. Murad, Russia's dismissed these claims, hasn't it, that have been made this afternoon. It says it knows nothing of these two chief suspects, and it's also posed a few questions itself.
Well, the questions that Russia has posed for many months now haven't been answered. Not in this press conference, not by the Met Police, the Foreign Ministry, by no one. And Russia stands by these questions. It says there's a whole slew of contradictions here, starting with what they said back in April, that, you know, it's not only Russia that could have made the Novichok nerve agents, as was insisted on by the UK government.
Novichok nerve agents were developed by the Soviet Union in the 1980s under a program codenamed Foliant. Within the past decade, Russia has produced and stockpiled small quantities of these agents, long after it signed the Chemical Weapons Convention. And during the 2000s, Russia commenced a program to test means of delivering nerve agents, including by application to door handles. We were right to say in March that the Russian state was responsible.
Before that, they said that the Novichoks could only have come from Russia, because implying that only Russia makes the Novichok nerve agents, to which Vladimir Putin himself responded that no, there's a whole host of countries that have synthesized the nerve agents. The Czech government, for example, admitted that it had synthesized it. Porton Down, the UK's own chemical laboratory, admitted that it had stockpiles of Novichok. So that you have that contradiction, and Britain insisting that it could only have come from Russia. Russia saying that, you know, there's a whole host of countries that could have made it, and there's little agreement in the matter.
Also, a point that came up today is that people were concerned about the safety for public in the areas of Salisbury and Amesbury, and perhaps leftovers of this nerve agent could still be there. What did the British police say about that?
Well, again, we have contradictory messages. Even today, during the briefing, police said at the same time that there was a danger and that there wasn't a danger.
Despite the meticulous and painstaking searches, and although unlikely, it is impossible to guarantee that there are no other materials present in the Salisbury area.
All the experts advise that the evidence to date does not suggest any long-term health risk from short-term or one-off contact with low levels of this agent.
So if you're a civilian in Salisbury, you might be a little confused, you know, with messages like this. The issue with Novichoks is there's so many different types of Novichoks, and they come in so many different forms, in powder, in gel, vapor, as a solid. So it all depends on what type of Novichok we're talking about and how quickly it degrades, if this indeed was a Novichok nerve agent that was used. There's really no way of saying how long it would last, because there's so many factors that factor into this. For example, whether it's in a sealed container, whether it's exposed to the elements, the concentration, the exact chemical formula, and it's really difficult to say, but best advice is to be wary.
OK, all right. Thanks, Murad. That was Murad Gaziev there with the latest on the Novichok case, which has caused all sorts of accusations to come forward today from the British government, accusing the Russian government of being behind that attack. Murad, thank you. OK, well, let's get the thoughts now. Chris Banbury, he's a political analyst and joins us from the UK this afternoon too. Chris, you were listening to what was said this afternoon. Did you see the evidence that was put forward as a big game changer?
I think first of all I have to say that the pressure in the House of Commons for everyone to rally behind Theresa May was utterly incredible. Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, asked a number of questions about what the British government had approached and asked the Russian government its cooperation for. And just simply for that, he was attacked, not just once, but twice, three, many times, for not being strong enough in support of Theresa May. So the atmosphere in the House of Commons was one where really everyone was expected to rally around the British government's stand on this. And anyone who didn't just doubt this, I mean, Corbyn condemned the attack. He said attacked the Russian government for not cooperating. This wasn't enough. So the first thing that has to be said, the real pressure to rally round. Secondly, I think in terms of the popular mood, there is a lot of cynicism about this attack. Someone I spoke to who's not political said, how long do you think it would take to find two Russians who came through London airport, Gatwick in this case, on visas with Russian passports in a particular time slot? How long would it take to identify these? 6 months? 24 hours, we think. 24 hours at most. Why 6 months? It seems a long time to identify these two people. And there is no conclusive evidence yet that this is being carried out by Russian state forces. Yet, repeatedly, that was the blame, with the implication that more sanctions would be in the offing, that Britain would be asking its Western allies to impose those sanctions on Russia. And I think there is, as I say, a lot of cynicism. People feel that we haven't had enough. Suddenly, after 6 months, we're told this is how the poison came into the country in a perfume bottle. Why could we not have been told that before? Why wasn't that put out in an alert? It would stop these two people picking up a perfume bottle with the poison in it, one of them dying as a consequence. Why have we not been told the full extent of what the danger might be in Salisbury? And that's still not been resolved. The poor people there are still suffering. So as I say, I think there's a lot of questioning, a lot of suspicion about this in Britain. But at the same time, this tremendous cry from the House of Commons that we have to rally around the flag and the British government in relation to all this.
Well, where does that pressure come from, Chris? Because given history, we know what we know about the Iraq War too. You would think people there would be keen to press the Prime Minister. OK, you're coming forward with this evidence from the intelligence services, but what more can you tell us? How can we be sure?
Well, as I say, I think what they've done is they've fully involved all the political parties in briefings in the last 24 hours from the security services, etc. But I think there is a tremendous pressure. This is now being portrayed as, you know, the Russian state, enemy state, up against the UK, a threat to us all, and that everyone has to understand our patriotic duty is to rally behind the UK state in relation to Russia. And of course that pressure for most politicians are going to fall into line. Most members of parliament are going to fall into line. Most of the media here is going to fall in the line. But I think what you're right to allude to is, given Britain's own performance in Iraq and elsewhere, and the fact that it's known to have chemical weapons, the double standards of Britain in this, there is a lot of suspicion about where Britain stands in a lot of these matters, stemming from all that. So I don't think that the British government has got rid of all the suspicion. For those who just simply want to follow the flag, accept what the media says, yes, this will be sufficient. For those who have a more critical mind and, as you say, recall Britain's escapades in Iraq and elsewhere around the world, recall the fact it does have its own chemical weapons, I think there is a lot of cynicism, a lot of doubt concerning this.
And where do you think this case will move from here? Because I suppose if you wanted a criminal trial, you'd have to extradite these two chief suspects, which is unlikely to happen. So how do you see this whole thing playing out and perhaps reaching any conclusion?
Well, it's unlikely to happen. They don't know who the two people are, the real names. It's very unlikely that either of these two are going to come for a holiday in the European Union and therefore be arrested and tried. I also don't understand what the question of cooperation with Russia is. Russia has said they will cooperate under the terms of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. It has said that. It's asked for evidence. It's asked to be briefed on what is happening here. That seems to have been refused. What we're then told is that Russia is not cooperating. Well, I mean, again, in my opinion, the jury is out of that. What has been the response of the British Prime Minister, the British Foreign Office, to Russian requests for cooperation by Moscow? We haven't had that yet. So I don't see this ever being resolved. And to me, what Theresa May today has said is that as far as the British government and the British state is concerned, this is the final settlement of that matter. Those two people are Russian agents, although that's not proved, Russian state agents. These two people are responsible. Russia is the criminal state here that's carried out this attack. End of matter. And I think that is now the British government's position, and it will be calling on the Americans and the European governments to retaliate with further sanctions, I suspect, against Russia.